Oh, hi there. This is Ashley. It's a dreary Sunday, but I have some coffee ready for football day. And lately I've just been thinking about, some of the classic books that I own that I've never gotten the chance to read. And back in college, I was an English major, so I've read a lot and I've always loved to read and I've always loved classic literature. But lately I've been reading a lot more contemporary fiction and things like that. And so I thought it would be nice to highlight some of that classic literature that I haven't read yet. And as you can see behind me, these are all my books that I have not read yet. And over here I have a lot of those classic novels. So I just wanted to go through about a dozen of them and share those with you and kind of talk about that. So here we go. So first up is Anna Karenina. I've probably mentioned this book in many of my other videos because I've read about 60% of it back in 2013, and then for some reason I put it down and haven't picked it up yet. So I still count this one as unread. Anna Karenina, I'm coming for you. Next up is The Scarlet Letter. I know this may be surprising, but I actually never had to read this in high school. And one of my family members bought it for me, along with many other Barnes & Noble classic literature books. And I tried reading it a few times, I think in high school and college, and I just didn't really understand it, and it didn't really sit well with me. So maybe this year or next year I'll take a stab at it and finally read this one. Next up is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This may be surprising also. I've read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I haven't read The Hobbit. And I've seen all the movies, and I really like this series. I just haven't read The Hobbit. So maybe I'll add this to my list to read this year. Maybe I'll wait until next year to read it and, reread the whole collection. Who knows? We'll see. Another classic lit book I would love to read sometime soon is Tess of Duberville by Thomas Hardy. One of the English classes in my high school did read this. I unfortunately was not in that class, so I didn't get to read it. And I used to have a really old copy of it, but it kind of fell apart and it just was blah. So I bought this copy last year, so I'm hoping that I can finally read this one sometime soon. Maybe this year. Who knows? It's thick. It's like 450 some pages. A very similar case is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I had a really old copy of this. It started falling apart while I was reading it, so I bought a newer edition of it, and I just haven't read it yet. Okay, so the next 3 books I'm going to talk about kind of all go together. It's not a series, but they're all books by Shakespeare. When I was in college, I did take a Shakespeare class, and I have dozens of his works already, but there are actually 3 plays that I haven't read yet. I know it's crazy because I love Shakespeare, but there are 3 that I haven't read, and I really feel like one of them is going to surprise you. So first up is A Midsummer Night's Dream. I haven't read this one. I've actually had this edition for quite some time now, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I know it's not very interesting to some people to actually sit and read plays, but I kind of enjoy it. So hopefully I'll get around to this soon. Next is Much Ado About Nothing. Again, I've seen the movie. I love the movie. Kenneth Branagh, so great. Emma Thompson, fabulous. But I just haven't read this one yet. I actually just got this copy in the mail, so hopefully I can read it soon. And then the surprising one, in my high school we actually read like a scene or 2 out of this play, but I've never read the whole thing. I've watched renditions of it in movies. Obviously I know what happens, but I've never read Romeo and Juliet. I know it's weird, but that's where I'm at. I'd love to read this one soon. It's such a classic. I feel like everybody should read it, but I'll read it soon, hopefully. I have two books that I have read, but I would love to reread this year or maybe next year. The first is Little Women. I've read this before, and I was actually in the middle of rereading it when my old vintage copy completely fell apart and disintegrated, so I turned it into art. You can see this board right here in the back of a lot of my photography too. I'll use this. It just has pages from Little Women all over it. And I would love to actually sit down and just reread this one, get all the way through. It's hefty, and I will have to start all over again because I have no idea where I was in my edition that fell apart. But I can't wait to read this one. Next up is A Little Princess. I've read this so many times. I love the movie. It was one of my favorite movies growing up. But it's been a while since I've read it, and I feel like it's one of those ones that you need to reread. That I need to reread. And so this is on my list of classics that I want to read, hopefully this year or next year. There you go. All right, I have two more books for you that I have. These are ones that I've never read. They've been on my list for a while. First is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. I actually read Vonnegut for the first time 2016. Yeah, in 2016 I read Cat's Cradle. But I have yet to read Slaughterhouse-Five. I've had this edition for 3-4 years now, maybe longer. And I just haven't gotten around to it. And I want to. I really want to read this. I've heard good things about it. And I think it's time. And last but not least, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I would love to read this. I started it last year, but I was kind of struggling to get into it. I was just probably not in the right mindset, so I set it down and haven't picked it up. But I would love to read this. I've never read it. I read A Room of One's Own in college, but I haven't read really anything of Virginia Woolf's collection since. So I'd love to read this one this year or next year. I keep saying that. And this is supposed to be, classics I want to read in 2018, but I'm not making any promises. I mean, this is a dozen books that I've laid out here, and I know I'm not going to be able to get through half of these, so I'm not making any promises, I swear. But I'll try to do an update video maybe later on this year or early next year, kind of talking about what classic literature I have read. I have yet to read any this year, and I didn't read very many this last year. So I'm really, really, really hoping to kind of force myself to stop, buying and reading all of this new stuff and, go back to my roots as an English major and start rereading and reading some classic lit. So I just want to thank you for stopping by. I know it's been a while since I've posted on my channel, and I really appreciate you watching this video. Have you read any of these books? Are there any books, classic lit, that you recommend to me? I have so many that I have read in college and since then, and I still have so many more over here that I haven't even talked about. These are the books that I feel like people might judge me for not ever having read, especially Scarlet Letter. I mean, that's a huge one. But what can you do? Not everybody's perfect. Again, thank you for stopping by. Please leave comments. I'd love to talk with you some more. And that's all I've got. All right, bye.